Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for July. I know. 2019 is like going like so fast. So fast. It's almost like it's on fire. It's almost like it's burning away. And but where did it start? Where did we start to ignite it? And was it through a bit of stone, or was it just through maybe just a quick snap? Maybe it was a ginger snap. Maybe it was ginger snap gaming. Maybe it was Darren Terpstra. Maybe it was his fault. Let's ask him, shall we? Hello, Darren.
Hey.
How you doing?
Doing good.
That's good. That's good. Good. Yeah, that was probably a crazy amount of intro there, but it doesn't matter because not that long ago, you brought us Ignite to Kickstarter, and it should have actually, probably changed the name to Engulfed afterwards, because you walked away with a huge amount of funding money, didn't you?
Yeah, no, we were super blessed. Couldn't be more thankful for all of our great backers out there.
That's cool. I guess I should do the admin for people who haven't kind of listened to us before. First of all, thank you for listening. The reason that we do this is because I think we've almost done 300 episodes, so it'd be rude to kind of stop, and we're just going to kind of keep going. And the second reason is because Ignite was one of these games that I kind of kept on looking at and going, no, I don't know. And it's one of these games on Kickstarter that came at the wrong time. And so I didn't have any money when it was on there. And it's one of those things I fully regret not getting involved in. So there you go. So here I am. I'm going to try and build Darren up as much as possible. So at the end of it, when we're finished here, he just turns around and says, I'll tell you what, I'll get you a copy of Ignite. And this is what we're building up to. But hopefully he won't notice me saying that last bit. So we'll see how we get on. One of the things we like to do is we like to find out a little bit about how people kind of got involved in the kind of the hobby to kind of begin with, how they were, how they ended up being surrounded by the pressed and printed trees. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of like your history? I mean, did you kind of grow up kind of playing board games, or was it something that kind of came into your life a little bit kind of later?
Yeah, so it wasn't so much my immediate family, but we have our grandparents and extended family out in Iowa, so we would always go out to visit them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going out to Iowa, and we were always the youngest cousins, and our older cousins would always bring like a cool new game. And so they brought us Settlers of Catan, I think back possibly before it was even in English printing.
All right.
I could be wrong in that, but they only had a German copy. So when you got a development card, you would have to snatch the instruction manual from whoever had it. And they had a little, cheat sheet thing of, if it's got this picture and it says this, it actually means this, because I don't speak German. And so, we fell in love with Settlers of Catan, way before it was cool, not to act too hipster. And then they brought...
I'll get you an avocado as well.
Yeah. They brought Carcassonne. I think that was probably the second game that they introduced us to, which was just super fun. And they just kept on bringing more and more unique games and exposed us to all of the different stuff that's out there, well, pieces of it. And so went off to college, didn't really think about it, played some Settlers of Catan Cities and Nights on Sundays,
Mm.
nothing too crazy,
Yeah.
Dominion here and there. But, it's university, so you've got plenty of things that you need to be doing and plenty of people to be hanging out with. And then came back after college, just started hanging out with more and more people who had more and more different types of games, and really fell in love with Dominion. That was my first big board game love after college. Just really liked the mechanism, really liked
Oh.
the fact that if you make good decisions at the beginning, it's going to really pay off for you. And if you make really dumb decisions at the beginning, you're going to be regretting it all the way through. It's just very strategic in how it's set up like that.
Okay.
So really fell in love with deck builders, and that's where the thought for Dominion came from, or of Ignite came from.
What was it you studied at college?
Business administration.
Oh, right. Okay. So were you doing anything creative at all while you were at college as well? I know you said you kind of did the occasional kind of like played games at college, but were you on the side? Were you kind of doing anything on the creative side of things?
No, I never really did anything on the creative side of board gaming while I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but when I was younger, I
Mm-hmm.
actually came up with something that's sort of similar to the X-Wing Star Wars game, or the big ship version of the X-Wing Star Wars game.
Like
I never actually
Armada.
got a full prototype going with my brother, but I
Uh-huh.
mocked out everything, with ion cannons and tractor beams and all these sort of things, and
Uh-huh.
did the whole system, but never ended up actually, doing anything with it.
I mean, even when you were playing games, were you kind of looking at making adjustments or thinking about things that you could do differently or how different mechanics would work doing kind of different things?
No, I think I was always more just I want something a little bit more as opposed to tweaking here and
Mm.
there. I think now I am much more prone to wanting to tweak things, now that
Mhm.
I'm sort of in that world. But back then, not nearly as much. No, it was always just trying to find the quickest path to victory and what was the most strategic thing to be doing at that time.
Okay. So you say you came out of college, and did you go straight? You said you met up with your kind of like your friends again. So were you regularly kind of gaming from there then? And was that when you started to kind of play more and experience kind of other games over kind of just Carcassonne and Catan?
No, not initially. Still played games and things like that, but not anything super regular. And then
Mhm.
at one point, I did sort of a social experiment where I lived on $7 a day for a year. And prior to doing
Wow.
that, I actually bought a good lot of games, to sort of occupy the time while I was doing
Uh-huh.
that. And so all of those came in, and that really was now the backbone of my board game collection. And I think it was during that year that I actually started working on Ignite for the first time.
What made you do the social experiment? I'm intrigued.
It's definitely not, what this podcast is about, but I'm very passionate about poverty alleviation and anti-human trafficking. Like that's why I went into
Mhm.
business in the first place, is to make some money to be able to help in those areas. And so I actually did it, and then I donated all of the money from that year to a different organization each month to highlight what that organization can do with just a normal person's monthly salary sort of thing. So it was more just to shine a light on what good other people and other organizations are doing, but sort of kicked me into board gaming as well. So there you go.
So is it an idea that I mean, I'm quite happy to talk about this. It's my podcast. So was the $7, was that kind of like an average wage on what some of the poorer people in society were having to live off of? Is that why you kind of picked that kind of arbitrary amount?
No. So first of all, it didn't include the $7 didn't include rent, insurance, and utilities, things that I split with my
Right.
roommates. So I didn't want to be a burden on the government or to my roommates.
Right.
But the $7 was sort of picked arbitrarily because I thought $6 would be too hard and $8 would be too easy.
Hmm.
But I mean, I only had $7 each day for gas, for food, for entertainment, for all of that. So yeah.
And anything that you earned over and above that, you ended up kind of, as you said, kind of like donating to the kind of like the local kind of charities.
Yeah, exactly. That was the plan. I actually figured out that I was doing it wrong about halfway through, and I was donating my whole monthly salary rather than holding back $7. So essentially, I was just living off of savings. But
Wow.
I didn't really. It was not that big of a deal if you think about it, because it's like $210 a month or something like that. So yeah, exactly.
But obviously, you've still got to take into account the wonderful things like health insurance and stuff like that that
Yeah,
you couldn't possibly say, right, I'm not going to bother kind of paying for kind of health insurance.
yep.
We have a different system over here. We believe that people should be allowed to be sick and not get into massive amounts of debt over it. Yeah, let's not go down this line
Yeah, I
that
would
kind of
agree with
move it,
that.
kind of move it away. But so have you always kind of been in that level, kind of like socially kind of active in terms of? You sound like you're the type of person that actually goes out and does stuff. That if, for instance, if something was bugging you, you'd actually go out and do something about it, as opposed to writing, a strongly worded letter or a strongly worded tweet and try and get like a couple of 100,000 retweets. You'd be the person to be going out and saying everybody's complaining about the leaves outside the apartment, so you would actually pick up a shovel and go out and clear the lot, clear it out the way, and let everybody kind of sit there and bump their gums about it instead. Is that the type of person that you are then?
Yeah, I that's a very fair assessment of me for sure.
Okay, okay. Are you quite driven then? I mean, if somebody says to you, right, okay, these are the steps that you need to take in order to be a success. I mean, did you sit down when you were thinking about Ignite and did you say, right, okay, if did you look at it from the point of view as I want to make the best game that I can, or were you trying to kind of like fix an issue that you saw with certain games?
Um, I'm very driven as a person. I think sometimes I just sort of go with my gut on a lot of things. So like when I was
Right,
younger, I had a really manual labor summer job. And
right.
each day I would just think about a story. Like I actually wrote a book over the course of 2 or 3 summers. And essentially it was just me writing one page every day for each
Hmm.
summer. Actually, I think it was for a couple of years. I don't remember. Anyway, and it's just like, it's not that I sat down and was like, this is what I need to do to create a great book. It was like, huh,
Mm,
this seems like a fun story. Let's, continue down this path for as long as I can and see where it
yeah,
ends up. And that's sort of what happened with Ignite. I built it because I was like, I really want a deck builder that has more player interaction and a more exciting end game than what is
right.
available right now. And I grew up, with Risk, getting in people's faces, negotiating, just having a good old time with that. I love, Blood Rage, uh, Rising Sun, some of those more interactive Eric Lang games.
Yeah,
I like getting into it, and deck builders in and of themselves don't usually lend themselves to that. So I was like, I really want to create something that's different than every other deck builder out there. And I actually started this before, even Clank was out there. So there's probably one or two other deck builders that had a map other than Trains, but that was really the
mm.
only one. I think around that time that had a map when I started creating Ignite.
Do, was there a kind of, as I say, was there something you were trying? Was there an issue that you saw in the kind of the combative type games? I mean, you mentioned specifically in the Ignite campaign, you actually mentioned kind of like Magic the Gathering and Pokemon. So you're saying, well, look, this game is not like that. So were you trying to get around kind of certain things with Magic the Gathering? I mean, my issue with Magic the Gathering is that it can be a pay to win system. So
Yeah.
unless you start off with a whack of cash at the beginning, you can't go in competitively very easily to Magic the Gathering, unless you're willing to shell out a little bit of money. I mean, Pokemon less so, but definitely for kind of Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, we added that verbiage to the Kickstarter page just because a lot of people don't know what a deck builder is off the top of their heads. And
Yeah.
in case someone in the audience is like that, when I say deck builder, I mean a box game that comes with everything you need and you build your deck as you play the game. But there's other people that when they hear deck builder, they think Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or something like that, where you buy upgrade cards and, booster packs and you build your deck before the game even starts,
Yeah.
which is a fine
Yeah.
system, but I didn't want to build something like that. I wanted a boxed, experience that is super replayable, but has the strategic wits and, requirements of building your deck in a good way during the game, if that makes sense.
No. Yeah. No, I mean, I know what you mean. And I guess the other thing is as well is when you get kind of systems that are trademarked by companies as well, in certain terminology that's trademarked by companies, it can make it's almost like you're saying, if you say to somebody, well, you're just exhausting these cards, do you mean you're tapping them? Yes, but I can't tell you you're tapping your cards because I'm not allowed to tell you that. And in some
Yeah.
cases, I'm maybe not allowed to say I'm exhausting the cards because that's somebody else that's taken that phrase, kind of thing. So, you're aware that sometimes the I guess the nomenclature for different types of games is purely based around avoiding not getting your bum smacked
Yeah.
for somebody saying you're using kind of like a copyrighted kind of game. So the idea was that you're building your deck to take on your kind of to take on your challengers as you're kind of like playing the game. So like kind of like Clank or other kind of deck building, kind of like the deck building side of games. Yeah.
Yeah, so the way that we always explained it was if Clank is like Dominion meets the Goonies, then Ignite is Dominion meets the Hunger Games. Um, a battle for supremacy as opposed to just sort of exploring some caves and
Mm-hmm.
then trying to get out alive.
Yeah. Did you play? I mean, have you played Clank?
I actually almost got to play Clank at the last convention that I was at. I've watched tons of videos about it. I know how to play it. I could probably pick it up right now if someone put it on the table.
Mm-hmm.
But because I had created Ignite prior to Clank coming out, um, I really just didn't want to play like the big competition that had just come out. I know that's super probably dumb, but I was just like, gosh, this game came out ahead of us and like really hit it well and just is doing super awesome and has all these expansions now. And so it's just
No.
like a little bit of wistfulness of like, if only I had been able to come out with this, 3 years earlier, work faster on it or something like that. So there is a little piece of Darren that dies every time I hear about how great Ignite is, or I mean, how great Clank is and how well received and loved.
Yeah, but I mean, I do see this argument on a lot of times where you see kind of similar games kind of coming out, and it's usually tied around kind of like theme, but then the games themselves end up being even quite different, even if they kind of got like the same mechanics. I mean, I said this on a recent episode, but putting, say, like Dinosaur Island and Dinogenics kind of side by side, they've got the same kind of theme. There's worker placement there, but they're kind of, in terms of how they play out over a period of time, they end up being kind of drastically different games. And in fact, you saying to me that, if you put, you could put Clank in the same kind of stable as Ignite, it's going to encourage me to play Ignite because I like Clank.
Yeah.
And therefore, I know this is going to be a game, unless you take some mad missteps, this is also going to be a game that I'm going to enjoy, and I'm probably going to end up kind of thinking, well, I understand the base level kind of mechanics for it. And I think, to be brutal, to be honest, I still think in terms of kind of like mechanics and games like that, I still think people need to realize that games can take anywhere from like a year to 3-4 years to develop. And we've all been, it happens in films, it happens in books, it happens in all types of creative media, that you will see people kind of producing very, very kind of similar products, even though these people can have no knowledge of each other,
Yeah.
whatsoever. From the kind of the beginning seed of Ignite, was there a lot of changes that you've made from the kind of the first iteration to the one that's, to the one that people are kind of going to be receiving through the, in the mail from you?
Yes, all sorts of changes have happened. Some, I mean, the vision of Ignite has never changed. I can say that, which is really awesome. But the implementation of everything has definitely changed, because the first time you throw it out on the table, you're just guessing on so many different things. You're like, I think this will work. I think this needs to be like this sort of cost and stuff like that. And a deck builder system in and of itself is pretty forgiving, just because everyone has the same opportunity for buying the same cards, at least if you have a static market. But we initially had spells as way, way too powerful, and we had to pull those back. And that's part of the reason that you get no honor from spells now, which lends itself to the lore that we sort of built around the system. We also made the bazaar in the middle, where you could initially trash as many cards as you wanted. You could sell them all, which just led to people getting to the bazaar, selling everything in 2 turns, and then being like way more powerful than everyone else. So obviously that's not a good system to go with either.
No.
So, just pieces like that definitely had to be, it's almost like probably like, building a statue or sculpting a statue. You have this giant piece of marble and you know what you want it to sort of look like. And at the beginning, you're just taking off these huge chunks of marble, left and right, and really just, hammering into it. And then as you go, you take out smaller and smaller tools. You take out the little hammer and chisel towards the end, and just the small refinements. And I think that's a good illustration of what creating a board game looks like from beginning to end. You got huge swings of the hammer at the beginning, and then towards the end, you're just like, I wonder if this should be 6 cost instead of 7 cost, or, minor tweaks like that.
Is it tempting when you're making something for like the first time and this is going to be your Iliad or whatever, to try and make it include kind of as much as possible?
Yes, 100% yes. We initially thought Ignite was going to be like a $200 game right out of the box, with just like, like a tombstone box that like you would get, and it's just got everything in it. And then, just going to conventions and talking to people who know better, they're like, no, you need to make like this into an expansion, and it's good to have like an expansion around a theme and different things like that. And so if any designers are out there listening, like, I just go into Google Drive and I just keep notes of all the different ideas that I have. And I'm like, all right, this is a great idea. Let's back burner it for a later time, because, we don't want the initial product to have a 36-page rule book that people have to be looking through. You know what I mean? But your creative juices are just flowing so much at the beginning, and that's why you want to capture as much as you can, because you're going to hit a point where you're like, I can't come up with any more ideas for this thing. And you'll be sort of depressed for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden you'll be hit with another great, fun idea for the next expansion, sort of thing. But keeping notes of all that stuff when everything is just exploding in your brain is the way to go. But then filtering those through the lens of, how do we make this the best initial game possible, is what I would suggest doing.
Did you toy around with smaller games? I mean, is there kind of like, do you have like a portfolio? I mean, within your Google Drive, is this game number 1 of 16, and there's maybe like a lighter card game that you could have brought to Kickstarter instead? Because you've got, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I mean, a game with the level of artwork that you've got, miniatures, art for your cards. I mean, 100,000 goal. I mean, Darren, what the fuck?
Yeah, no,
it's kind of like, okay.
That's a very legitimate question. So Ignite was the first one that we started working on, or I started working on. I actually did finish a game uh, during the time that I was working on Ignite. That's a lot smaller. We'll be releasing it hopefully later 2019. It's called Rocket Cats, and it's a great game. I love it. But we hadn't been promoting it at conventions. We hadn't been talking it up on Facebook groups and different things like that nearly as much as we had been with Ignite. And so it was sort of like, do I want to launch the white whale, right from the beginning, or do I want to sort of backtrack and do something smaller? But I feel like if I had done something smaller, it wouldn't have had the recognition of all of the people that I had been talking to for so many, years, and building the email list for, I think, a year and a half, 2 years prior to launching Ignite. So I could have launched it, but I actually think it would have been a detriment as opposed to helping us. And then, like I said, we'll be launching it next year to now our audience of people who know us and, know our quality, as well as, how much communication is a big backbone of our business. We're doing weekly updates to our Kickstarter backers, which is essentially unheard of at this point, and people are really seeming to like it. So the fact that we have all of these people who love how we run Kickstarters is going to be, that much more of a benefit as we release the next game, even if it is a smaller one.
In terms of the campaign itself, I mean, you mentioned kind of growing up, kind of like your email lists. Was it difficult to get people to kind of have a look at the game in terms of, games media, in terms of like, preview sense and things like that?
Yeah, it's always a little bit more difficult to get people to take you seriously when it's your first game. Even if you do have, I invested in everything, from the video to the artwork to the miniatures and stuff like that. And so it looked super professional, but if you haven't really created anything and you're not really known in the industry, it is much more difficult to get in front of some of the big time reviewers. I never heard back from Heavy, I think it's Heavy Cardboard, who would be a great person to talk about Ignite and, to take a look at it. But he doesn't know me. I'm not on the scene enough for him to take a look at it yet. And that's totally fine. And hopefully I will be, in the next couple of years. But yeah, so then you just go and you find the ones that will, take you on. Man vs. Meeple was super nice in their communications with me. And, even going with some of the less known reviewers who still do an excellent job, but aren't necessarily, the front runners for some of the giant campaigns. Getting in with them is always a great place to be. And, you have to hit so many reviewers of your game, or previewers, I think, in order to be taken seriously. So yeah, you definitely have to take a little bit more time finding people who will take you seriously when you're at the beginning.
Yeah, and with the audience kind of side of things.
Yeah.
Was it like kind of approaching it from a kind of almost like a cold start and saying, "Hey, we're going to do a big miniatures game and give me $100,000," and again, Darren?
Yeah. So from the audience side, we hit conventions really hard. We actually unveiled Ignite the first time at Gen Con, the 50th anniversary, which, let me tell you, that was absolutely mind-blowing to walk into that as your first convention ever. But we had so many people who went through a playtest. We were in the playtest hall, who just were absolutely in love with the system. I've still got emails. I've got some good friends actually at this point who have come back to play again at other Gen Cons that we go to. and see it at other conventions and things like that. And really, you just have to bring enough of a polished thing that they can see your vision for it without having to look too hard past, paper cutouts and, Sharpie marker and stuff like that. But if you have, actual cardboard cards and you have a board that doesn't look like you, created it from scrap paper from Target, which is a fine stage to be at, but that's not where I want to be prototyping at when I'm grabbing email addresses. And so we went to as many conventions as we could over 2 years and just had people play it, had me at a booth, asking every person that walked by, hey, are you interested in a battling deck builder? And some people will, not give you the type of time of day. And some people are like, oh, that sounds super interesting, and come over, and just everyone you can tell them about it and try and get an email address.
What made you kind of then decide miniatures? Was it because if you put miniatures on anything, it funds ridiculously high? I mean, that must have had an influence on the overall cost of the campaign. So was it a kind of a business decision you had to make? Well, if we just do standees, we could probably make this game we could probably set a funding goal of 50 grand. Whereas setting with miniatures, we're having to go kind of that level to make sure that we cover off kind of all the costs.
Yeah, so there definitely is a trend on Kickstarter, whether you like it or not, that if it's got miniatures in it, it's going to usually fund better. We thought about doing standees, but we didn't think the standees, because we really wanted the daggers in the back system. So when you take damage in Ignite, you actually insert a dagger into the back of the miniature. It's just super elegant. It's super like visceral in the moment where you're like, yeah, like stick it in there and just, like super.
Can you do that? Do that noise again.
Yeah. And we really wanted that. And we thought about doing something like that with the cardboard standees. But after talking with people, if people really liked the game, you could wear out your standees and your daggers pretty quickly. And we didn't want people to be, out of luck because they loved the game so much that they wore the pieces out. And so I also just really love like Blood Rage. And I think I love it that much more because it does have miniatures. Maybe that makes me a super shallow board game player. Who knows? You can tell me later in private. But,
I'm not a type of person to judge people like this. I'm not going to say that. I know that for some people, the miniature side of things is an important thing, and it adds that extra little bit of. It just adds that little extra bit that kind of pushes them across the finish line. I know when you do get games where it doesn't appear as much, like say Gloomhaven, but then I reckon if they put everything as miniatures in Gloomhaven, you'd need to actually have a Gloomhaven box the size of the house, and secondly, it'd be $300 for a game. So you'd be looking at kind of. But then Kingdom Death Monster does that. So again, it's kind of like horses for courses. Were you quietly confident when you launched the campaign? I mean, you've got some, in terms of people talking about it, you had some big names at the time. You got like Vaughn Reynolds, Jeremy Howard, you had Lance, the Undead Viking, talking about it. Michael Wright, you've got a lot of kind of covering kind of like a lot of names kind of talking about it. So did you set yourself expectations to say, okay, if we reach X amount within the first 48 hours, we know we kind of have a chance here?
We were pretty confident that we would be able to hit the 100,000 mark, which was our goal, which again, like the reason that's sort of, I don't know if I went back, if I would change my goal to make it less, because people love seeing the, 1900 times, percent funded or whatever, those sort of things. But really we needed 100,000 in order to produce the game. And we didn't want to be one of those companies that we hit our goal of 20,000 or something like that, and then we don't get past it, and then we have to cancel the campaign because, that just doesn't look right. That just doesn't seem right to us. And so we asked for what we legitimately needed in order to fund. and we were pretty sure we would hit that 100,000, but we had no idea if that was going to be on day, 25, or if that would be
Mhm.
day, 1.5, like it actually ended up being, which was awesome.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, one of Kickstarter's latest guidelines is to say, "Oi, don't be setting yourself a low target so you can say you've funded within the first couple of days." So, um, yeah, so that's kind of like an interesting take that they're actually now saying to people that we might have to have a word with you if you obviously have a huge campaign and you're setting yourself a low target just to get yourself funded. And I think that was because earlier this year there was certainly quite a few campaigns who funded in terms of, they funded, but then they were cancelled kind of like they were cancelled as projects because the 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 kind of the announcement kind of came out to say, well, we don't look like we're going to be trending to hit what we'd like to hit. And it made you wonder, right, so have you set yourself a funding goal that was far too low? And if you stay at that funding goal, you're going to be in a lot of financial trouble. So, but again, you hit you're one of these, you kind of went against the grain again, because you kind of went, well, we need this money, so we're going to ask for this money, and we're kind of going to go ahead, and obviously it helped you kind of get the money. What was the mood like in camp when you hit that funding,
Oh my goodness.
when you crossed that line? I mean,
Yeah,
you must
it was
you know
it was just ecstatic. And I mean, the night before, I remember dreaming about just like 200 dreams throughout the night, like mini dreams. And one of them we hit like $3 bajillion, and in one of them we didn't even hit $10,000, and I wasn't sure what I was even going to do with Ignite, now that it didn't like launch. And just back and forth, like just the craziest of dreams. But then to wake up the next morning and almost be there, and then by mid-afternoon to hit it, was just ecstatic. And I had personal friends texting me throughout the day, and like they're all looking at like trending charts and stuff like that. Like they're going to hit like $3 million, which obviously everyone knows that those trending charts aren't accurate until you hit a certain point in them.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, there must have been part of you that had that kind of, gentle kind of daydream with kind of like, gentle kind of saxophone music kind of playing
Yeah.
in the background as you're kind of sitting there going, yeah, what happens if it did though? What happens if it did hit 3 million? What would you do if it hit 3 million? And it's like, diddle, 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 kind of that kind of, that kind of dream kind of thing going on. One of the things that people talk about in terms of when their Kickstarters take off really, really well, and I'm talking about Frank West with the City of Kings, and I'm talking about Orange Nebula and the wonderful Mark Neidlinger, talking about Vindication, is that the community comes from nowhere and they become almost like your little band of champions, kind of answering questions and fighting the good fight for you, and generally kind of almost looking out for the campaign for you as well. Did you find that you got that? Was there people that you are kind of currently looking through the list of backers and just saying, you guys deserve like a second copy of the game for the amount of support that you gave us?
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, I can't even. I'll just give you an example. There was a guy that I think he ran Ignite tabletop simulator sessions for 36 hours straight. I think I have
Wow.
that number right. And literally, he changed his name to, name, and then in parentheses, the tireless gamer. Because in our campaign, it became like the in thing to change your name to like, if you
Yeah.
helped us get past like a stretch goal, you added the stretch goal, like bringer of, the cyclone, or things like that, which was just fun.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
But
Yeah, Bringer of the Avalanche.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And people are jumping in and just answering the questions that have been answered 600 times, but you have to scroll through the comments to be able to find them. And I know that people talk about like how you do a Kickstarter campaign, and you get like all of these trolls and stuff like that. And I mean, I've seen a YouTube comment section before, so I know that they're out there sort of thing. And so I had like steeled myself inwardly of like, all right, if the trolls come, like you'll be okay sort of thing. And we had the most uplifting, like nicest, like not a harsh word spoken campaign I think that has ever happened. Like it was so beautiful, and it was just, I think, a testament to the people that were backing it, and like the super backers that were, you know, really excited about it, and just like everyone just kept everything super positive. And when we didn't have an answer to a question, we, you know, said as much, and we tried to be super transparent and said, hey, here's our plan, but we don't have, you know, a definite step for this yet, and just different things like that. But yeah, the backers were just so amazing in um, how they interacted with each other, how they interacted with us, and just wanting to see this thing come to life almost as much as we did.
But I mean, I think one of the things that you did very well was the communication. I mean, I think, because I see a lot of Kickstarters. I mean, I hate to think the number of kicks. I have a super backer, but I'm getting the kind of the laminated version next, so I'll be, you know, super shiny backer. But one of the things that breaks my heart is when I see kind of like a kind of a campaign where the comments aren't there, but also the updates aren't there. So there's not an awful lot of levels of interactivity. Whereas on all the successful campaigns, and it's not just updating because you're hitting stretch goals, it's updating because you're trying to keep the kind of the communication going, and the you know, the community going as well, is that you're constantly kind of telling people, you know, this is what's happening, this is what we're up to, this is what our thoughts, come and, you know, dive in, kind of little reminders, just little kind of sideways thoughts that you're having and stuff like that, you know, which is always kind of interesting. And I think sometimes the community will find you, and I think, you know, the building up of the community isn't kind of like the marketing before. It's like you're always continually trying to build up the community all the way through. So I see this with a lot of, you know, these campaigns. You can see in yours that you're just basically, it's like every day, it's like, I'm surprised you actually ever got any work done at all, considering the number of times you were kind of like kind of backing. In terms of then, obviously you go double your funding level. Does that open up different thoughts and calculations in terms of, well, we've got to deliver? There's 1,632 people that are now expecting to see kind of something coming through their front door. Does that then generate a different kind of set of logistical calculations that you need to make? You're obviously having to have different conversations with the manufacturer, different conversations with like shipping companies and things like that. So does that then add on a whole additional pile of work that you didn't expect to happen as well?
No, I feel like, because if our initial goal had been 20,000 and then we hit 200,000, I think that would have been, you know, one of those scrambling moments. But because we knew we needed to hit the 100,000 to even be able to make this game possible, you know, we already had a large, you know, manufacturer, talking with them, you know, having quotes of different, you know, amounts and different things like that. You know, we knew, you know, this many boxes and this many cartons and this many pallets and things like that. We had sort of all of that on the front end. And the nice thing about Kickstarter in the last couple of years is that there have been companies that have come out that are able to scale along with you. So like Quartermaster Logistics, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, a $20,000, you know, campaign or a $200,000 campaign, like they'll be able to, you know, scale along with you for the most part. So it really wasn't too much of a jump. It was just allowed us to be able to add, you know, more exciting things. And, you know, one of the things that was great about our backers was them saying, hey, you guys haven't fully thought this through yet. like, how are we going to be able to track how expensive a title card was, what cost we bought it for? And so then because
Yeah.
we hit the $200,000 mark, we were able to go, okay, like instead of just like regular cardstock sort of thing for this, let's just make these like pure cardboard, so that they're, more meaty and you can actually use like a sliding adjuster on it. Like, awesome. Like different things like that were made possible because of the 200,000. But I don't think it added, a huge burden on us because we were already in those conversations beforehand.
Are you putting more pressure on yourself now that you've had a successful Kickstarter in terms of maintaining the financial side of things? Because I'm right in saying that this is now what you do on a full-time basis. So does this put you in a situation where you're now thinking, well, I need to have another kind of successful Kickstarter, or are you thinking distribution? I mean, are you thinking about getting? I mean, is Ignite, and is Ignite a game that could be supported by retail? Because what I see from a lot of these kind of bigger games is, I mean, Gloomhaven kind of as normal breaks all the exceptions, is to say, you get a copy of Gloomhaven, you're pretty much getting the copy of Gloomhaven that came with the Kickstarter campaign. However, if you get a copy of, say, Blood Rage, Rising Sun, the game that you're getting in retail is in some ways is vastly inferior to the game that you got in the Kickstarter campaign. So are you in the position where you're saying, well, in order to keep this going, I've got to look at another bigger hit again? Otherwise, I'm looking at a day job kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried from the financial portion of it, just because we are a super small team. I'm the only, full-time employee of this
Right.
company.
Okay. Okay.
So that takes a lot of pressure off. But we definitely are thinking, what are the next steps? And for Ignite specifically, we want it to hit everyone's doors, and we want everyone to see like, oh, this game is as awesome as I thought it was going to be, which we 100% believe it is. And the people who have played it on Tabletop Simulator and have really like enjoyed it, like they're 100% behind it as well. So we really want like the hype train to like fully pull into the station, and then for us to do another Kickstarter, and hopefully this Kickstarter will allow us to do some additional languages and different things like that. Will Ignite end up in retail at some point? Maybe, but we're just not. That'll probably be in the future at some point when we're more well known and when Ignite has sort of cemented itself in board game culture, as opposed to just sort of a being seen as a one and done Kickstarter sort of thing, which I think it is. Sort of perceived as that right now, since it's our first game, which just comes with the
I mean,
territory.
you're the shiny star, and a part of this culture of kind of latest hotness. You've done well. You've done 6 figures on Kickstarter. People will be wondering about what you're kind of gonna do next. In terms of growing the business forward, are you going to? One of the things I see some of the businesses of your size doing is starting to publish kind of other people's games as well as developing your own games. Some of them do, some of them don't. I mean, Frank Westcity of Games, he's designing his own stuff. Whereas Alleycat Games have been publishing, games by, David Terpstra and things like that. So are those also thoughts that you're having about, well, how do we, do we bring in other people's designs, or do we continue to design our own stuff?
Yeah, so right now I'm working on 5 different games essentially.
Right.
And so I don't think there's any lack of, you know, board game ideas and, things coming down the pipeline. If I met someone at a convention who was like, hey, I really want Ginger Snap Gaming to publish this, and if it was a unique enough game that I thought it fit with our company, then I would totally be in talks with them. But we're not going to be actively pursuing that at this point.
Okay.
Just because we want to establish ourselves off of the games that I've developed at this point. And the thing that we really want to stand apart with Ginger Snap Gaming is like quality, communication, but then also uniqueness of the games. We don't want our games to feel like another rehashed worker placement. To be honest, I'll probably never produce a worker placement unless, some sort of amazing, idea hits me. Just because I feel like they've been done pretty successfully. And I think there's been tons of different iterations of them. And I don't want to produce something that's only marginally different. I want to produce something that, you just stop and you're like, oh, this is really cool and different from anything else on my shelf.
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. Well, I mean, one of the reasons that we're talking is the late pledges are open. I mean, was that when you reached the funding goal? Was that something you'd already considered if you'd reached the funding goal to have kind of late pledges, or was that something that was kind of brought in further down the line as you've seen, the kind of the popularity?
No, we always knew that we were going to do late pledges. We actually really need
Mm.
to promote that more because we can get some more hype on Facebook and stuff like that, but we'll probably, push that out in a more,
Yeah.
dedicated marketing approach. But yeah, we always knew that we were going to do late pledges just because if you don't, it's sort of money left on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're using late pledges with your pledge manager that you're using for, shipping and stuff like that and getting people's addresses and surveys, then, it's just sort of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, one of the pledge levels that you had said basically, here's one for you, one to kind of like give or sell to someone else. Was and you had 32 people kind of taking you up on that. Was that kind of, is that you kind of like base it in the reality of the fact that, whenever you see, as soon as you see kind of posts on Board Game Geek or Board Game Spotlight or the board game, wherever, saying, yeah, I just got my, super duper Dunkin' Ducky pledge, with extra minis coming through, immediately on one of the selling boards, there's like, for sale.
Yeah.
Super duper Dunkin' Ducky master pledge with all stretch goals kind of thing. We just like going, well, there's people that are kind of interested in kind of flipping this. We might as well just allow them to do it kind of officially.
Yeah, that pledge level was actually done super late. It was actually done after our Kickstarter had started, and we just
Right.
had the idea. We're like, what if we just gave them, $30 off of what it would cost to buy two through the regular, system, and just say, hey, you get two copies. Do whatever you want with the second one, because I think Kickstarters are known for, you being able to offload it at, a little bit of a price hike, and so some people expect that. So
Oh, hello, Batman.
yeah, yeah.
I haven't seen that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen
And
that in a couple of
I
places.
think it's lessening. Like I sold all of the extras for Rising Sun to cover my cost of buying the whole thing. So I essentially kept the base game for free. But for Batman, I got it, and after watching some things, I'm like, this is not for our group. And I think I only sold it for like $10 or $20 more than I ended up, picking it up from Kickstarter. So I think people are
Yeah.
getting smarter about like, oh, I'm not actually. I think the secondary market is lesser so than it used to be, but that's just
I
a
think it
guess
de-
from my side.
I think it depends on the cost of the base game. I think, for instance, if you're looking at, say, maybe Root as an example, where they just couldn't get the kind of the games out quick enough to
Mhm.
people. The base game for Root was like $60, and there was no $60 or $70, I think. There was no way that Leader Games could have anticipated how popular the kind of the. I guess there was a lot of kind of like a lot of backers regret, and what I mean by that is not people that regretted backing the game. There's people that regretted not backing the game,
Yeah.
that didn't follow up with their pledge. And I think, in that market, people were quite happy to say, well, they were selling them for like $90, $100 in the kind of like the secondary market. I think when you're looking at Batman, it's crossing into that territory where it's like, I'm spending,
Yeah.
You have to look at the face. You have to say, I'm spending $350 on cardboard here and some nice figures. I think it's difficult to kind of get it across that line. And I think there was cases of people kind of listing their Batman for like $50, $100 above, and folk were just swearing at them and just saying, "Don't, you're just being an ass here.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that. You're not going to get that money for it." So it's kind of like, it was just interesting to see the pledge. For people who are looking to kind of go into to pledge afterwards, you've got like your $99 kind of base game. You've got then the $169 base game plus the freeze,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds quite cold. And then you've got kind of like the all-in pledge for kind of like $200, which is your 11 races, your base game, 1,200 cards, 140 tokens, a dragon, 15 power cards, dragon potion deck, 20 tokens, partridge in a pear tree, 5 gold rings, 4 calling birds, 3 French hens, and 10 drummers drumming. And you're still doing the one for you, one to sell kind of thing. So, is this? I take it. Did you get a reasonable number of kind of dollar pledges, kind of
Yeah.
on it?
Yeah. I mean, we still got a good number of dollar pledges of people, just wanting to follow the campaign that didn't necessarily upgrade to, a higher pledge level. We tried to, we tried to mitigate that as much as we could. But yeah, we still ended up with a lot of dollar pledges. So hopefully those people will, late pledge when they have a little bit more money. Because like you said, we really did launch at sort of a sucker of a time with a big CMON, game coming in. I think when we looked, there was 4 million or multi-million dollar campaigns that were running at the same time as us. So we really did screw up royally as far as when we hit the market. But c'est la vie, there really wasn't any way to know beforehand.
I don't think you can get around that nowadays. I think we've
Yeah.
had multiple conversations over the past couple of years about, there is not a quiet time for putting a Kickstarter campaign out there, and the guys that do try and put it out in the quiet time, they end up not funding because people just aren't looking at kind of spending kind of any money. I think kind of like Gen Con's one, Origins is there's those certain types in the year where people are just not willing to kind of put their money down because they're wanting to keep it after they go to the con, which is kind of one of these things. For people who have listened along and are saying, okay, if I was stuck in an elevator with Darren and and he was going to give me the quick kind of 60-second pitch about his board game and why I should consider, rather than phoning the emergency services to help get me out the lift, I should maybe log into CrowdOx and consider dropping some cash in order to get myself a second, a pledge. What would you say to these people why they should be, considering jumping on the Ignite bandwagon?
So if you like deck builders, but you want something with a more exciting end game and with more player interaction, Ignite is for you. If you think the idea of pushing someone into a giant pit of lava by using an ice wall sounds fun, Ignite is for you. If you like tactical miniatures game, but don't want to spend 3 hours setting up, an 1,000-point army, the Undead Viking will say Ignite is for you. If you just want something that's super imaginative and creative and plays ridiculously different each game, whether it's your asymmetric race ability or the, I think, 8 different terrain types that we have, then Ignite is for you. If you love, completely strategic games that have the smallest amount of luck that you can really get in a, card game, I think Ignite is for you. That is not
Cool.
how I would have put all of that if I had, written it down, but that's essentially what Ignite is. It's a ton of fun,
And you,
battling friends and just getting, hilarious situations and just laughing about it.
and you totally missed out the stabby knives in the back.
And the stabby knives in the back are awesome.
Are absolutely awesome. That's kind of cool. So yeah, so what we'll do is we will put a link to the pledge manager in the show notes, so we've got notes to show. But for people who want to follow you on the various social media places on the internet webs, where do you exist on the internet webs, Darren?
So Ginger Snap Gaming has both a group, and then Ginger Snap Gaming has a page. Ignite has a group on Facebook, so you can find us at either place there. Ginger Snap Gaming is also on Twitter. We're not super active on there right now, but hoping to be more so. We're also on Instagram. I personally am on Facebook. If you want to follow me personally, I'm not exactly sure why you necessarily would, but I'm pretty interesting, I guess. But yeah, those are the main places. And then gingersnapgaming.com. If you sign up for our email list, that's the best way to stay in touch with all the cool stuff that we're doing.
What's with your icon? Just your logo.
Have you not seen that before?
Yeah, I have, but I never seen it closed up. I thought you were kind of doing this in joy. It's like pure anger. You are saying to hell with this game.
It's a ginger that's snapping. I mean,
I suppose. I guess it looks like Pandemic. Are you saying you don't like Pandemic?
I actually don't like Pandemic, but that is.
I'm actually, Matt Leacock. He's a personal friend of mine. He's not a personal friend of mine, but I'd like to stir things up. But no, I was like, this is meant to be joyous gaming, but it's not. You're really, I hate this game.
It's
all good.
more satirical than anything.
I'm sure that's a really good defense that your lawyer will tell you to go with.
Yep.
If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, and bless every one of you that follow us wherever you follow us, you can find us on different places, worn out places across the internet webs. If you search for We're Not Wizards, you can find us on Twitter, you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on blog, which is we're not wizards.blogspot.com, where we write previews and things like that. You can sideways glances and first thoughts and musings and ramblings of old people. You can find us on our own website, which is we're not wizards.com. You can find us on different various podcast catchers, which have got the word pod and the word cast in them, except for Spotify and Streaker or Speaker or something like that, apparently, that doesn't have it in either. So that's amazing. If you like what you've listened to tonight, there's a couple of things you can do. You can tell somebody else that we exist, because that's how we spread our virus of podcasting tabletop stuff across the world. And tell people that you like, tell people that you don't like, because some people have to suffer. Or you can go to other podcast catchers such as the wonderful Apple Podcasts just for now before it changes itself, and consider giving us a subscription, or consider giving us a rating or a review. If you are going to be giving us a rating or a review, don't give us 10 stars, because it makes me feel even more fabulous than I should, and my ego is big enough as it is, so you don't want to be doing that. But on the other way as well, don't give me 1 star, because I don't want to cry. But give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average and we're just a little bit average. But the person who has not been average tonight, and I don't want to anger him in case he snaps, is the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic Mr. Darren Terpstra. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome indeed. I can only wish you the very, very best of luck with Ignite and everything else that you get involved in. There is only 2 more things to do. And the first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Darren?
Nope.
Absolutely not. There you go. Spoken like a true professional. The If only there are other professionals that would listen to you and say the same thing. But you never know. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Darren. Say goodbye, Darren.
Adios, everyone.
He's taken it a bit kind of continental there, but I'm sure it'll be fine. And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful. And if you're fancy fighting other people with little stabby bits of plastic so you can stab in the back when you're damaging them and you want to have a deck building thing, which you can deck build, so you can build your deck so you can fight other people with your little miniatures on your various different terrains, including lava. But don't stand in the lava because otherwise you'll get burned and you'll die. And check out Ignite. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.